So if you were to ask the entirety of America, if you're American women specifically, because they get abortions, if you were to ask every American woman, including states with abortion access like Illinois or like something like a southern state which doesn't have it, would you say that they have more rights and more freedom of choice, like bodily autonomy, than they did before Roe v. Wade was overturned?
States that outlaw abortion, of course, have more rights. You know why? Because women that are in the womb aren't being murdered and they have the right to life.
That's where your view would come in, and that's
no, hold on. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
Is life a right? Do you have a right to life once you exist?
Yes, but then the argument is,
well, you
when
said
does
yes.
life begin?
Well, no. So then answer me the question. I mean, you know when I believe life begins at, not just what I believe, what science reflects. Human development starts at conception. We can agree at that.
Human development, sure.
What's up, beautiful people of YouTube? Hope you guys are feeling good. I'm your host, Elario, and today I'm back with another video I want to check out with you guys. This is called Kirk takes down liberal male feminist. You know the drill, guys. We talk less and react more. Let's check this one out.
Hello, my name is Anthony. I'm going to pivot towards an abortion issue.
I've never debated that before.
Yeah, I don't think you have either. Yeah. One thing I want to make clear is obviously there's people in the crowd. Obviously, I don't have the same worldview as people in the crowd, but I'm not here to to negatively talk. I'm not going to talk down to people who have different beliefs. I think that's not something that our country would be founded on. I think respectful disagreement. But in terms of abortion, the one thing, shout out Dean Withers, I guess, but the one thing that caught my eye was our women with IUDs murderers debate. So can you just give a refresh and just explain if you think women with IUDs are or not murderers? Because
I actually debated this with Dean. No, I mean it prevents conception.
Yes, but
it's no different than a condom or different than birth control.
But his argument was that, and I'm almost 100% sure you agreed with this, is that when conception happens, a unique human life is created when an IUD prevents human life.
It prevents the attachment to the uterine wall.
Yes, but when it's already a zygote, which is you would consider a unique human life, yes?
Correct, yes.
So then you're saying effectively that the IUD is, by your definition, if you believe life begins...
That's not the way an IUD works. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but... Yeah. It prevents fertilization.
Yes. Okay. So turning off of that, in terms of a conservative worldview, I want to talk about how, specifically when you think of Roe v. Wade being overturned, the right to privacy, that kind of stuff, when that's a precedent that's been used for other cases, things like gay marriage, like Obergefell versus Hodges, if I'm remembering correctly, things like the right for gay marriage specifically, I think is it's a slippery slope, because when you overturn a case that relies on that right for privacy, you can start unraveling things that, I would consider marrying whoever you want to, regardless of your political affiliation, whether you believe in gay marriage or not. That's included in your amendments. That should the right to do what you want. Isn't the Conservative Party all about freedom of choice, at a baseline view?
There's a lot there. We believe in liberty, not license, so we believe you should be able to do things that elevate humanity and elevate your society, not license. For example, we don't believe you should be able to marry a 12-year-old.
Yeah, logically.
But that's freedom, isn't it? No, it's not, because that's license.
Yes.
So you must have the distinction, the philosophical maturity to know liberty versus licentiousness.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And then one thing I want to turn, because is so if you were to ask the entirety of America, if you're American women specifically, because they get abortions, if you were to ask every American woman, including states with abortion access like Illinois or something like a southern state which doesn't have it, would you say that they have more rights and more freedom of choice, bodily autonomy, than they did before Roe v. Wade was overturned?
Of course, states that outlaw abortion, of course, have more rights. You know why? Because women that are in the womb aren't being murdered and they have the right to life.
That's where your view would come in, and that's
no, hold on. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
Is life a right? Do you have a right to life once you exist?
Yes, but then the argument is,
well, you
when
said
does
yes.
life begin?
Well, no. So then answer me the question. I mean, you know when I believe life begins at, not just what I believe, what science reflects. Human development starts at conception. We can agree at that.
Human development, sure. Yeah.
Okay. No. So, but if it's human development, then it's human life. You have to find another word other than life.
Yeah.
So tell me what word besides life you would use
to describe conceptives.
Conception.
Conception.
When it's fetus, whatever. What word other than alive? Because it's not dead. Because you could agree it's not dead because it has a heartbeat and DNA and the cells are forming and they're splitting. So if it's not alive and it's not dead, what word would you use?
I wouldn't necessarily call it alive. I wouldn't necessarily call it dead. I think there's a distinction. I wouldn't label it with one word just because it's I don't have the
But let's think about this more deeply, because I could tell you're smart. we actually always exist on the binary of alive or dead.
Yeah, I mean,
So then you have to choose. It's either dead or alive. There isn't a third option. If you want to create one, you can go to the science department here and argue that. But what is the third option other than alive and dead?
I would say. I don't know what he said.
I don't know, but it's okay.
I would say the one thing I want to talk is viability. I know I'm kind of dodging it, but like.
No, I know you are dodging it
Yeah.
because I just, and I'm not trying to pinpoint you. Just to close the thought, then we can go to viability. Abortionists cannot answer this question ever because there is not a third option.
Yeah.
You are either alive or dead. It is a binary of existence, right? Now you could be supportive when you are alive, meaning you might need to have medicine or you might need to have a ventilator, but you are still alive by all objective measurements. Or you are dead. We have a clinical definition in the hospital when someone is dead. We have an agreed upon clinical definition. We also have we do not have a clinical agreed upon definition of when something is alive. So when a human being is going on the process of human development in utero, it technically, of course, is alive, and therefore it's a human life, but we use all this different kind of trappings and language to try to dehumanize the being.
Yeah.
Let's put that aside.
Okay.
So think about that in the next days and weeks, because maybe it might convince you.
Yeah.
Viability.
So, like, in terms of viability, like, I believe it's, what, around 24, 26 weeks, where it's considered it can be born prematurely and
Yeah,
exist.
I mean, at 20 or 21 weeks, a miraculous NICU baby can be born, but I will grant you, before that, it's almost, yes, 24 weeks about a baby can survive a NICU. But let's take that example. So if viability was the moral standard, if a baby is born around 24 or 25 weeks, they have to go to a NICU. Do you know what a NICU is? It's okay if you don't. It's a neonatal intensive care unit.
Yeah.
Basically, where very, very small human beings, small babies go, and they have all sorts of machines that have to support them because they have not gone through the entire process of gestation. Basically, they were cut 15 weeks early. They're not viable. Are they alive?
You're saying they're not viable. I mean,
They can't survive without machines.
They can't survive without machines.
So
I mean,
are they alive?
I would say, yeah, I guess they're
Well,
alive.
then how is it any different than a 16-week-old that requires an umbilical cord?
Because okay, we're talking about viability. We're talking about the definition of viability, to my knowledge, is being able to exist outside the womb.
It can't. It cannot exist without machines.
But it's existing outside the womb.
Support.
Right, but it cannot exist
That's
without
focus.
some other external supporting device. It cannot breathe on its own. It cannot clear its bladder. It's in a NICU. It has, and if you've ever seen the image, I encourage you to look at it online. A NICU, you'll see a baby that's literally the size of the Sharpie pen that has like 15 different contraptions. I bet there's a NICU baby in this audience, by the way. Yeah, someone's raising their hand right there. Praise God. Someone that's born premature in the hands. It's amazing. But it does beg the question. They were not technically viable under the pro-abortion definition because they could not survive without external support. So an external support could be an umbilical cord or it could be a baby ventilator.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I necessarily agree with specifically that definition, like external
Well,
support.
then that's fine. Give me a definition of viability, and I'll hold you to that standard.
Well, okay. So I guess the viability I was talking about, I guess I still will talk about, is like external, like needs to survive outside the womb. Maybe not necessarily on its own, because like obviously none of us, like you can't even provide for yourself if you're an infant too, like under 5.
Right.
But like I would say that in terms of like viability, like something like existing outside the womb. Yeah, you just talked about NICU babies, whatever. Not whatever. But
no, it's fine. No, but the NICU baby essentially is mimicking the gestational process outside of the womb, if that makes sense. Because a 27-week-old baby would not be able to likely survive if it wasn't for all these contraptions or machines. So what we've done is we've created with technology basically a counterfeit, a pretty good one, of the gestational process that they otherwise would be getting in utero.
Yeah.
But they're still alive. When a NICU baby is born at 26 weeks, they get a birth certificate. They get a social security number, but they have a bunch of machines and they're not able to breathe on their own.
Yeah.
But we would both agree that's a human being.
yeah.
Why?
I think, honestly, it's, I would say it's easier for me to sit up here. Obviously, I'm not a woman, I'm not pregnant, I'm not a mother. But I think at some point, it's easier for me to sit here and be like pro-abortion versus like if I was a mother, I think I would have some sort of like, obviously, it's a hard choice to make. Like I wouldn't, whatever. But then you also have the issue of like access to healthcare. With like if you view abortion as access to healthcare.
Now we're slipping into a separate argument, which is fine, which is degree of dependency. We're running the whole gauntlet, and I'm happy to do all of it, right? So I think we have viability. We've
come to
we've thoroughly went through those fields, but now we go to degree of dependency. You say it is a tough decision to make. I will push back a little bit. When women are properly educated that this is murder, I don't think it's actually a difficult decision to make. I don't think any mom wants to murder their child.
Also, if you consider it murder, but I can see what you're saying.
No, of course, but I mean, again, you have to then consider it something. You can consider it termination, elimination, but based on just very basic reason, human development, human life, the unjust taking of a human life is necessarily murder. And so, but then, let me just, complete the point. Is it ever right to take a life if you don't have the money to support that life?
Specifically, money, no.
Because you said healthcare or access to that. Said differently, if a mother had a 2-year-old baby and she lost her job and she goes into bankruptcy and she's in poverty, are you allowed to eliminate or terminate your 2-year-old baby because it might help you save money?
No, and I understand what the point you're getting at. It's like, oh, it's a 2-year-old. I understand that point.
Because we see
you're looking at a 2-year-old. It's the same thing as something.
It is
fetus,
morally indistinguishable than a 2-week-old in utero.
In your opinion, yes.
But I know, but you have to tell me why it's different.
Because I see what you're saying.
No, tell me what's different than a 2-year-old versus a 2-week-old in utero. What's the difference, other than one is older?
Because one isn't necessarily. I know I didn't define an actual definition of when life begins, whatever. But that's always going to be contested. It's always going to be this is always going to be an issue.
Well, it's contested for now. We believe biological truth will win, because human development does have a starting point, and we believe that once ethics can align with science and biology, then human life will act. We will have an agreed upon idea of that's when life actually begins.
I see what you're saying. And then in terms of biological evidence, obviously,
because just sorry to interrupt, but we have reconsidered so many scientific norms over the last 100 years. For example, when the smallpox epidemic happened, we used to give people arsenic because we thought having diarrhea would make it easier for you to get smallpox out of your system. We revisited that, and we were like, that was insane. We used to have bloodletting in the 1700s, where we would, if you were sick, you would try to get as much blood out of your system as possible. We also then discovered antibiotics, and we discovered germ theory. The same goes with abortion. The more we actually learn about the process of human development, the more ultrasound technology, the more that we actually come to the conclusion that it is a human life. And finally, let me just ask one other question, then I do want to get to somebody else.
Yep.
Would you agree that what makes you fundamentally unique than the person next to you is your DNA? We good? Okay. Let me just repeat it. That's okay. Would you agree that what makes you fundamentally unique versus the person next to you, who's the bodybuilder, is DNA?
I mean, from you're saying, a biological standpoint, yes, the things that make me unique from him is at a molecular level, at DNA. But I would also argue that things I'm different than him, not just because of my DNA, obviously. But.
Right, but to distill it down to its biological truth, DNA, you should have autonomy over your own DNA. Would you agree?
Over your own DNA, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I mean, what is the abortion argument? My body, my choice.
Yes.
Otherwise said, my DNA, my choice.
I wouldn't, when DNA, I see where you're getting.
But then, therefore, if it's not your DNA, why should it be your choice?
Yeah, I see where you're getting at. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't.
Tell me why.
Because, it could just be me being pro-choice, whatever. As I consider access to healthcare.
Think about it outside of your ideological worldview. Just think about it. Just think of it as a free thinker. Why do you disagree with it?
I disagree because I would say that a woman's right, that is almost a part of her body is.
Well, it's attached to her body, but it's not her DNA.
But I would also say,
for example, your mom cannot vote for you.
Yes,
your mom is a different, distinct person than you, right?
Mm-hmm. I would say that in terms of DNA, since I consider it, it's the mother's not job or duty, but that I consider it a part of them. You might say it's attached to them, but I'd say you ask your mother, you'd say when she was pregnant with you, she felt like you were an extension of herself. I'm not going to speak for her, but I feel it's much harder than making distinct things. And I can sit here and debate, but I don't have nearly enough educated. But
fair enough. I want you to think about this in the coming days, weeks, and months, because that's what this is all about. I'm not here to just gotcha. I could tell you're looking at this correctly. We as pro-lifers have a hard job. Our job is to tell millions of people to take responsibility for their actions. Our job is to say that every human being is inherently valuable because it's a human being.
Yes.
And that is a harder argument. Your argument is actually way easier, which is if it feels good, do it. And if something annoying happens, eliminate it. we think you should not be able to eliminate another human being just because it might make your life mildly inconvenient.
Yeah.
So we just have a difference.
Yeah.
Our job is harder, but we believe we're right. You think you're right, and I hope we'll win one day. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Can
it.
I get a hat? And
Yeah,
then,
sure. I can tell you're a big MAGA guy. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
All right. Okay. Just as the guy said in the beginning, he wants a respectful, debate and all that. And I mean, I must commend him. This debate played out really well. It was just straight to the point kind of thing. Now, I do like the fact that he's not up here trying to argue like he knows it all. He's not up here trying to, state facts to something that he has no way of confirming. And he did make a statement that I wish everyone would remember. I'm not a woman, I can't get pregnant. Because, I mean, that's a separate talk on that side, but I feel like it's very necessary when we're talking about this kind of things. He acknowledges that as a man, he can't get pregnant. As such, he can't have first-hand information about this particular thing. Now, there was a comparison Charlie Kirk did there on the NICU babies and the actual borns, or the babies born after the normal 9-month period. Okay, I've actually seen a video of this kind of premature babies. I was so emotional when I saw that video because the little guy was just like this big, about this big, sorry. And honestly, if not for technology, I'm pretty sure that baby would be dead. But he was placed in these such machines that Charlie described here, and they showed us the progress over the months till he eventually became 2 years old. And I was flabbergasted. I was so happy for this couple. Man, it was a beautiful thing to see. Now back to this debate, yeah? What's the difference between having that child prematurely? It's a living child, a living thing. And people abort when a child is up to that, 27 weeks, 16 weeks. People take or perform abortions at that time. From Charlie's example, why would you consider that as not murder? Why would you say that isn't murder? Because as I saw, right, this baby was so tiny, literally very tiny. It's just a bit bigger than my palm. And he survived. Under the right conditions, he survived. So Charlie's question here is, what's the difference between that child already out but premature, and a child at that same age but is still in the womb? Because I know at that point, the college student talked about something on viability, how viable it is and all that. So what is the difference? Because as that child is born premature, it's depending on machines and other things to enable its growth. While in the womb, in the utero, as Charlie calls it, it depends on its mom through the connection of the umbilical cord. So what exactly is the difference? And why would you paint morality to think that they are both different from each other when it's literally the same thing? At that point, you can argue that these kids are the same age, just that one is out of the womb already and one is still in the womb. So why would you argue that they are not? And honestly, science has proven that life begins at conception. You can argue that from today till next year, but that's a fact. It's actually the truth, because when the sperm fertilizes the egg and it turns to a zygote, then it turns into a fetus, as Charlie said, the heartbeat is there, cells are splitting, it's forming, it's getting hands and all that. I've actually seen a diagram representation of the stages of pregnancy and how the baby, develops in each of these stages, and it's just marvelous. It's amazing, and we can't deny, no matter how everyone tries to sugarcoat it, we can't deny that that zygote, that fetus, is a life on its own, and it should be considered. Fundamental right to life. Everyone has a right to life, and that's just Charlie's argument. That's basically what he's saying. Yeah, the students gave an argument on IUDs and why Charlie would or wouldn't think that it's murder, because as Charlie says, abortion is murder. So why won't Charlie think that an IUD is murder? Now, as Charlie did explain there, which honestly medical practices agree to, IUD is a form of prevention. It's a form of prevention and not actively taking away the baby, because the sperm enters, but it does not allow it to meet the uterine walls. Do you understand? The IUD is just the same as getting a condom or a vasectomy. Trying to prevent it. Maybe it's as a sort of family planning, birth control. You don't want another child. You don't want to have an abortion each time it comes, so you just prevent it. It's not murder, and it's perfectly safe. So I really couldn't understand his argument there, because honestly he didn't seem to agree with it. But the IUD is just a normal form of birth control and not a form of abortion. But guys, please give us your 2 cents on this in the comment section, and please leave a thumbs up for us at the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe.